G'day guys, welcome to today's video. I know I'm a bit late with this one, but I'm sure as you can see, I've been busy constructing my new home. So today's video review is for The Invisible Man. The latest movie from Blumhouse and from Universal Monsters stable, formerly known as Dark Universe. Based on a modernised version of the original H.G. Wells classic novel by writer and director Leigh Whannell, who previously directed 2018's Upgrade and starred in and was responsible for Saw with his mate James Wan, and are both from my hometown of Melbourne. Cecilia Cass, played by Elizabeth Moss from Handmaid's Tale, is the abused partner of tech billionaire genius Adrian Griffin, played by Oliver Jackson-Cohen from Upgrade. After she successfully attempts to leave him, he uncharacteristically takes his own life, and she's called to his brother's office, who is a lawyer and the executor of the estate, Tom Griffin, played by Michael Dorman, who tells her that Adrian has left her $5 million over 4 years, as long as she stays sane and of good character. Staying with her friends, a cop named James, Aldous Hodge, and his teenage daughter named Sydney, Storm Reed, Cecilia starts to become convinced that Adrian's found a way to turn himself invisible and is stalking her, but the more she tries to convince people what she's saying is true, the more they suspect she is indeed losing her mind. The last movie I saw by Blumhouse was Fantasy Island, which was dreadful, and you can check out my review on this channel. And the previous attempts by Universal to launch their shared dark universe of monster movies has also met with a similar fate. But as soon as you stop forcing something to happen, it invariably does, and this movie is an example of that. Made on a budget of only $7 million, this movie is Hitchcockian in its approach and is a gripping, compelling, thrilling time at the cinema. Like Saw before it, this movie proves that you don't need Tom Cruise and $200 million, just a good premise, good story, well written and thought out and well executed and acted. Elizabeth Moss would not be the typical choice for this kind of film, but she was extremely convincing. You don't need to be shown the domestic violence that she may have endured prior to the opening of the film, as she conveys the emotions of her character's situation perfectly. The supporting cast all do a good job and portray their roles competently and believably. The music, though, was particularly great and really invoked a feeling of tension, horror, suspense and thrills. But the real star of the show is the direction and the camera work. The way that the camera slowly pans to an empty hallway, or the character talking is to one side of an open frame, really builds an ominous feeling that something could happen at any moment, and was reminiscent of Kubrick's The Shining. It also reminded me of Spielberg's Jaws, in that you don't see the actual shark until near the end, but feel its foreboding presence throughout the entire film, through the clever use of music, camera work and acting. This also extended to the excellent limited use of CG. Having a small effects budget, they had to really get their bang for their buck when they show the Invisible Man effects, and it was really done well. The only complaint I would have, once again, is the marketing. This movie was way better than it appeared in the trailers. There are some genuine jump scares and justified its horror title. This is not really about the Invisible Man, as you'll not get a 30-minute explanation of how the technology works, or a montage of his experiments leading up to a successful use of the suit, as you do in a movie like Hollow Man, for example. So in that respect, it's more of the Invisible Man's ex-wife than the Invisible Man himself. However, this was a pleasant surprise, as it's really not necessary to explain to a modern audience how and why the invisibility suit works, and it makes the movie move along at a brisk pace, where at no point are you wondering what is going on. Leigh Whannell really deserves big props for this well-constructed suspense thriller. It's a highly enjoyable film that has tight pacing, building to a crescendo that never outstays its welcome. There are actually 2 twists towards the end, and 2 scenes that I didn't expect, but kept you on your toes as a viewer and engaged until the final scene. I definitely recommend checking out this movie, as you'll definitely feel like you got your money's worth. So my rating for The Invisible Man is 7.5 out of 10 stars. If you're leaving us here, thanks for watching this far. If you don't want to hear any more, you better get out of here now, because here comes the spoiler section. Okay, so the opening scene is Cecilia leaving Adrian and creeping out of the house. Adrian chases her as she's gotten her sister to meet her at the road so she can escape. Cecilia then goes to stay with her friend James, a local cop, and his teenage daughter. She's emotionally on edge as she's just fled an abusive relationship. She's then informed from her sister that Adrian is dead, and she's summoned to meet with Adrian's lawyer, which is also his brother, where she's told that she's going to be given $100,000 per month for the next 4 years. It's then that she starts to believe that Adrian is somehow alive and stalking her. James, Tom and her sister are all trying to convince her that it's all in her head, and Tom shows her pics of the death scene and shows her Adrian's ashes in his office. However, Adrian is alive and invisible and is stalking her and trying to make her go insane and ruin everything in her life. There's a cool little Easter egg the first time the Invisible Man appears. James's teenage daughter is studying fashion design and Cecilia is staying in her room with her. She wakes up in the middle of the night as the invisible Adrian is taunting her, and the first thing she sees when she awakens is a dummy in the corner of the room with a long coat and a trilby hat, reminiscent of the original Invisible Man costume from the Universal monster movie from 1933 with Claude Rains. Adrian continues to harass her from the shadows to worse and worse effect. He sends an email to her sister from her saying how much he hates her. He steals examples of her work to make her look stupid in a job interview, and he punches James's teenage daughter so that she thinks that Cecilia did it. Things are spiralling out of control, and no one believes her that her deceased ex now has the power of invisibility and is stalking her. She goes with James to see Tom and confronts him that he must know what's going on, and he tells her that he hated his brother as much as she did, and don't let him win by thinking that he's stalking her from beyond the grave. Not taking no for an answer, after another run-in with the invisible foe, she returns to his house and searches his lab where she finds his spare invisibility suit. She hides it in a closet and escapes before he catches her. She desperately calls her sister to meet her for dinner. She pleads with her to explain in the middle of a crowded restaurant that she's got proof that Adrian is alive and that he's doing all of this. Right at that moment, her knife floats up into the air and slits her throat, and then the knife is forced into Cecilia's hand. She's now standing in the middle of the restaurant over her sister's dead body with the murder weapon. Cecilia is arrested, restrained, and thrown in a mental hospital. While she's incarcerated, she's told that her blood tests have shown that she's pregnant. Tom comes to visit to tell her that she's no longer eligible to receive the money, unless she has the baby and gets back with Adrian, and then he can make all of this go away, which she believed he was involved the whole time anyway. He tells her he'll give her 3 days to decide, and at this stage she refuses and steals his pen. Back in her cell with the invisible Adrian, she attempts to slit her wrists with the pen nib, preventing herself having a baby of Adrian's descent, and Adrian reveals himself and tries to stop her. She escapes amongst the carnage of an invisible foe beating off unknowing guards. During the final confrontation, which is in the rain, this is where the CGI shines, as Adrian's suit is damaged and glitching out. He tells her that he'll hurt the ones that she loves, and she knows that this means that he's going to target James's teenage daughter, Sydney. She makes it back to the house, as does James, just as the Invisible Man is attacking Sydney. They beat him off and shoot him, and lift his mask to reveal it to be Tom. Adrian is then found by the police, tied up in his basement, and is claiming to be a victim of his brother as well. Cecilia calls Adrian and agrees to come to his house and meet with him. She's wired and James is sitting in the car outside recording the conversation. She tells Adrian that she'll come back to him and have his baby if he'll admit that he's been stalking her as the Invisible Man. He continues to protest his innocence, but you can tell by the look in his eyes that he's a sinister manipulator. Cecilia breaks down in tears and says she needs to go freshen up in the bathroom, to which Adrian arrogantly agrees. The next scene is Adrian smirking, about to tuck into his dinner, when his arm with the knife suddenly jumps up and his own hand slits his own throat. A minute or so later, Cecilia runs out of the bathroom, screams and calls 911. She backs away out of view of the security camera that's been recording the whole event and lets Adrian know that she was responsible before he draws his final breath. As she strolls outside, James runs up and sees the invisibility suit in her handbag. He asks what happens and she tells him he took his own life. They give each other a knowing look and the movie ends. Once again, great. Could this lead to The Invisible Woman? There you go. Really enjoyed this one, guys. It's not going to change the world, but it's definitely a good modernisation reboot. If you've seen The Invisible Man, let me know what you thought and if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And let me know if you like the new studio. While you're here, check out some of my other videos and feel free to subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.